Alright. Dann wünsche ich euch jetzt erstmal einen wunderschönen guten Abend. Ich freue mich sehr, dass ihr an diesem tollen Frühlingsabend den Weg zu uns gefunden habt. Herzlich willkommen beim Kantine Zukunft Talk Social Gastronomy, Impulse für ein gerechteres Ernährungssystem. Ich freue mich, dass so viele von euch da sind, dass sich so viele angemeldet haben. Wir waren zwischenzeitlich bei 100 Anmeldungen. Mal gucken, wie viele Leute heute im Laufe des Abends auftauchen. Wer mich noch nicht kennt, ich bin Dina Hoffmann, ich bin Co-CEO von Speiseräume und Teil des Teams der Kantine Zukunft und werde heute durch die Veranstaltung moderieren. Und für alle, die Kantine Zukunft vielleicht noch nicht kennen, Kantine Zukunft ist ein vom Berliner Senat, von der Senatsverwaltung für Verbraucherschutz gefördertes Projekt. Und wir unterstützen Küchenteams der öffentlichen Gemeinschaftsgastronomie dabei, ihr Angebot zukunftsfähig weiterzuentwickeln. Wir arbeiten also mit Kitas, mit Schulen, mit Krankenhäusern, mit Senioreneinrichtungen, also überall da, wo Berlin das Essen finanziert bzw. mitfinanziert. Und schauen, dass wir ein Angebot schaffen, was sich auszeichnet durch einen hohen Bioanteil, durch viel Handwerk, durch Frische und ja, was einfach ehrlich und vor allem lecker ist. Und gleichzeitig interessiert uns aber auch eine große oder vielleicht auch größere Frage, und zwar, welche Rolle kann Essen eigentlich in unserer Gesellschaft spielen? Und wir sind ja Teil der Berliner Ernährungsstrategie, also eins von vielen Projekten, was vom Berliner Senat gefördert wird, um eine Veränderung im Ernährungssystem der Metropolregion zu schaffen. Und es ist mir auch wichtig, nochmal zu betonen, dass es eben viele Ansätze braucht, um zu Veränderungen zu kommen und nicht nur ein Thema, was bearbeitet wird, sondern einen Mix. Und genau, das schauen wir uns heute eigentlich an und das ist beziehungsweise auch einer der Gründe, warum wir dieses Format der Talks ins Leben gerufen haben. Denn unsere Hauptzielgruppe sind ja die Küchenteams und unser Ansatz oder unsere Aufgabe ist die Veränderung in den Küchen. Also warum treffen wir uns eigentlich hier in dieser Runde? Weil wir es auch als unsere Aufgabe verstehen, Gemeinschaftsgastronomie in den größeren ernährungspolitischen Kontext zu setzen und Praktikerinnen, Denker und Projekte zusammenzubringen, die Essen und Ernährung als Werkzeug für Veränderung nutzen. Also um Menschen zusammenzubringen, euch zusammenzubringen, die mit Essen ganz konkret an gesellschaftlichen Themen arbeiten und um das größere Ganze der urbanen Ernährungspolitik mit unserem täglichen Tun zu verbinden. Also Befähigung und Beratung für Küchenteams und Kantinen. Heute geht es aber ganz konkret um Social Gastronomy. Und zwar nicht als Buzzword, sondern ganz praktisch darum, wie Essen und Hospitality, also Gastlichkeit, als Ansatz zu nutzen, um Themen wie den Zugang zu Nahrung, Ungleichheit, Migration, Würde und Gemeinschaft anzugehen. Und ja, das kann sehr unterschiedlich aussehen. Von politischen Programmen über Ausbildungsrestaurants bis hin zu Community-Orten. Genau diese verschiedenen Perspektiven wollen wir heute anschauen. Kurz zum Ablauf. Dankeschön. Wir sind gerade mitten im Willkommenheißen und starten dann mit 3 Inputs, 10 Minuten, 2 digitale und einer hier vor Ort, gefolgt von 5 Minuten Q&A, wo ihr die Chance habt, eure Fragen zu stellen. Nach einer 20 Minuten Pause hören wir dann eine kleine Einordnung zum Thema oder vom Thema hier in Berlin von Kavita Milou, die auch vor Ort sein wird. Und anschließend gibt es einen kleinen Markt der Möglichkeiten, wo 10 Initiativen aus Berlin, die sich auch unter diesem Begriff zusammenfassen lassen, ihre Arbeit vorstellen und an den Tischen für Gespräche bereitstehen werden. Ich freue mich riesig, heute hier im Boom zu sein, weil das nämlich ein Ort ist, wo wir auch 2020 unseren Auftakt machen wollten. Wenn ihr euch erinnern könnt, 2020 war was, und zwar die Corona-Pandemie, die Großveranstaltungen stark eingeschränkt hat. Wir hatten also 2 oder sogar 3 Ansätze, wo wir hier in großer Runde zusammenkommen wollten, um den Start von Kantine Zukunft zu feiern. Und jedes Mal kam da was dazwischen, sodass wir es am Ende digital gestreamt haben, aber trotzdem hier alles aufgenommen haben. Und das ist jetzt ein Full-Circle-Moment, dass wir doch eine größere Veranstaltung wieder hier in den Räumlichkeiten machen können. Und ich suche gerade den Raum ab nach Sina von Boom. Da, danke. Die ich jetzt zu mir auf die Bühne einlade, dass sie auch noch 1, 2 Sachen sagt zu Boom, was es eigentlich für ein Ort ist und wofür Boom steht.
Danke. Ich mache es ganz schnell, damit es nicht noch so lange dauert. Danke. Genau, schön, dass ihr endlich hier seid. Genau, mein Name ist Sina, ich bin Referentin hier im Haus und auch ziemlich seit Anfang an dabei. Und ich wollte euch einfach nur ganz kurz darauf aufmerksam machen, dass das BUM eben ein unabhängiger, solidarischer Ort ist und nicht nur ein Veranstaltungsort, sondern inzwischen eine richtig eingeschworene Community. Und unser Nutzungsvertrag läuft Ende diesen Jahres aus und wir suchen noch Co-Mieterinnen, die mit uns in Zukunft dieses Haus bespielen möchten. Also falls ihr Interesse habt, geht einfach auf unsere Webseite oder kommt auf mich zu, wenn ihr noch Fragen habt, damit wir unabhängige dritte Orte, wo Begegnung stattfindet, nicht mehr am Essenstisch, sondern auch eben bei der Arbeit, bei Aktivismus und politischer Teilhabe. Genau, damit das fortgesetzt werden kann, wenn ihr Interesse habt, geht auf unsere Webseite und ansonsten wünsche ich einfach eine gute Veranstaltung. Danke dir.
Danke, dass wir hier sein dürfen. Und wer schon mal bei einem Talk war, der kennt es schon. Wir bekommen gerne so ein kleines Gefühl dafür, wer eigentlich im Raum sitzt. Und mich würde jetzt erstmal interessieren, wer war denn schon mal bei einem Kantine Zukunft Talk? Bitte einmal aufstehen. Wir müssen ja ein bisschen aktivieren hier auf den Nachmittag. Auch schon ein paar. Wer hat vor diesem Dankeschön, ihr könnt euch wieder setzen. Wer hat vor diesem Event noch nie was von Kantine Zukunft gehört? Hi, okay, ja, genau, aufstehen oder Hände. Hi, auch ein paar. Schön, dass ihr den Weg zu uns gefunden habt. Wer arbeitet mit Essen, mit Ernährung, beziehungsweise in der Gastronomie? Habe ich mir schon gedacht, dass hier fast alle aufstehen würden. Wer ist einfach interessiert? Who doesn't speak any German? Okay. Die Veranstaltung wird auf jeden Fall ein kleiner Mix aus Deutsch und Englisch sein. Also ich starte in Deutsch und werde dann im Laufe des Talks auf Englisch wechseln, weil die Impulsgeberinnen eben auch fast alle englischsprachig sind. Okay. Dann würde ich sagen, wissen wir jetzt, dass es eine super spannende Mischung aus Menschen ist, die hier im Raum zusammengekommen ist. Und damit switche ich ins Englische, beziehungsweise lade ich die Menschen, die sich jetzt hinten hingestellt haben, auch ganz herzlich ein, sich doch auch noch hinzusetzen. Hier vorne sind auf jeden Fall noch Plätze frei. Und wir haben jetzt gleich 20, 30 Minuten Frontal-Entertainment. Also es würde sich lohnen, hier den Platz noch einzunehmen. Toll. Danke, dass ihr dem folgt. Okay, so since we have a fully packed program, let's dive right into it by zooming out a bit and looking at food access from a systemic perspective. I am so delighted to welcome Juliana Tangari onto the screen. Juliana is co-founder and director of the Instituto Comida de Amanhã, which I probably pronounced horribly, in Brazil. And she works at the intersection of food policy, law, and social development. Hi. She has been deeply involved in shaping urban food policies in Brazil, including as former chair of the Municipal Food Policy Council in Rio de Janeiro, and is currently engaged in several international initiatives around food system and equity. Today, she'll share insights into how Brazil has approached food access as a public issue. Juliana, it's so nice to have you with us, and the stage is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dina. Can you hear me well? Okay. Okay, so thank you. Hi, everyone. I really wish I could join you and be there with you, but since I can't, I'm glad I can join you online and share with you some of the ideas or key messages of how we in Brazil have been developing policies to ensure the access to food. So I hope it's not, I won't deep diving everything. So I just give you a glimpse and I'll be open for questions after it. So, okay, I think I have a presentation to share with you. Oh, that's already there. Can be. Okay, so just before giving this overview about Brazilian policies, I just wanted to tell you from where I am speaking. And so Comida, and you pronounce it very well, Dina. So Comida is a Brazilian organization. We've been working since 2016, but mainly since 2020 with cities, and to support better food systems, to support better food policies for better food systems from cities, and working mainly with local governments. And although we cover a lot of topics and food-related policies on the whole food system spectrum, we usually work mainly with these key topics about school meals, governance in food systems, climate and biodiversity, how we eat more local, and food democracy. This is very, very, very a key topic for us. And we develop a lot of programs. We are around a lot of networks. So with that knowledge is that I will be speaking to you about what Brazil has been doing since early 2000s. Maybe you were aware of some of this, but I'll give you just the key ideas or the key pillars of our system in Brazil to fight food insecurity since the 2000s. So in that moment, we had this master strategy that is called Brazilian Zero Hunger Strategy. And there were a lot of programs that were being, and policies that were being developed at a national level, not exactly all at the same time, but it was a very rich decade on policy innovation. And we ended that decade in 2010 with an amendment on our constitution to recognize, to acknowledge the right to food. So when the right to food became a fundamental right, it kind of gave another perspective of the whole spectrum of policies that we've been developing since then. And the typologies of these policies were mainly cash transfer programs, and I will give you some ideas of how it has been working here. Public food procurement programs, both for school meals programs, but also for food assistance programs. And on the school meal national program in Brazil, that's where we got this massive program in Brazil, and we make them a universal program. So every student in every public school has the right to have a free meal and not a snack, so a healthy meal, and without charge. And all these key pillars of this strategy developed into a policy system that it's called CISAN. It's very difficult to pronounce, but the idea is that we need to have multi-level governance, participatory governance of all these food policies into a system of policies. So this is a very quick overview of what we had in the 20 to 2010. And now I want to give you some examples of these four main kinds of policies. There are so much more. There are so many others, but I would just, I won't pretend covering everything, but it's just some of the main ones that we've been developing either on national level or at local level. Okay, so for cash transfer policies, besides the national and main one, it's called in Portuguese Bolsa Família. So it's a benefit, a cash benefit that is provided for registered families for unconditional use. We have also some more specific cash transfer policies and programs like food vouchers and what we call in Portuguese, I'm not sure that's a good translation for it, social currency. So it's more on the idea of sustaining local development and using that cash transfer for under social protection policies to benefit local economy and local suppliers. So these are like from the general to the more specific ones that we have in Brazil. And usually those more specifics are developed at local level. We don't have a national policy with this goal. Okay, so there are also policies that are more programs, usually at local level, that are more oriented to specific markets, specific food markets, and to provide food at a low price to low-income families. And on these general kind of programs, we have since at national level tax exemption for some basic foods to more specific public facilities or food markets that are run by governments or by contractors from local governments that need to provide, need to offer, to supply fresh food or essential goods at a low price. So it's sometimes is a mix of subsidies with price regulation. And these more complex ones are usually developed at local level also. Okay, so moving forward, we have also, and I know that that's very similar to what you might have in your countries, like both food donation policies and meals donation policies. So either we provide food for free or meals for free. And these food banks or programs that we have in Brazil, there are also a lot of complex architectures and policies from national level to local level. But we have, since this food kits and food boxes provided for charities and purchased from family farmers, so it connects food assistance with food procurement programs to those more oriented to emergencies and temporary benefits, not on a regular basis. And one that I think it's very interesting, and we don't have this in many cities, but in some cities in Brazil, mainly in Belo Horizonte, a program that provides free kits or free kits of foods to public school students from low-income families during the closing period of schools. So these families that usually these students that only have the school meals as their main meal of the day, when the schools are closed, they get this benefit from the municipality. And sorry for running fast, but trying to close this on the idea of more linked to social gastronomy. So how we provide meals for those in need. We have also different kinds of programs. And the main one, I would say, is the National School Meals Program that, as I mentioned before, since early 2000s, provide free meals, free healthy meals for all students in public schools for free. So regardless of the income of their families, they have these meals provided for free. So the cost of these meals come from the national government, from national funding, and part from municipalities, so public money. And we have also these kind of kitchens or canteens or public restaurants or restaurants in public facilities to provide meals for low-income workers, for homeless people, for those people that don't have a regular access to food. And we have mainly two kinds here. Either we have these restaurants where meals are served there and everyone can have that meal for free. So usually they have a long line and people need to wait, etc. And we have another kind of program, a public food assistance program, where only registered families, registered under social protection beneficiary programs get this takeaway meals to take to their home. So meals are not served in these restaurants, but meals are taken to their households. And we have also public-private partnerships. So public funded or subsidized programs run by NGOs, charities, so not exactly in a public facility. And these NGOs, these charities are providing meals for free, but they got some partial support from municipalities and also from the federal government, because now we have a national policy to partially subsidize communal kitchens. We call it solidarity kitchens in Portuguese. So that's what I wanted to share briefly with you, and I'll be open to deep diving everything else you wanted to see from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Juliana, for giving us this broader perspective and opening up the room to the ideas of how, governments, local and both local and national, can implement or at least subsidize projects that help getting people access to good food. We are now opening the room for questions. And this is your opportunity to ask Juliana, who is miles and miles away, what came up during her talk. Is there something that sparked your interest? Wenn ihr Fragen habt, dann meldet euch gerne. Wenn ihr auf Deutsch fragen wollt, dann übersetzen wir das auch gerne. Genau, wir haben auch schon eine Wortmeldung. We have one question for sure to start with. And we'll go around with the microphone.
Thank you very much for the interesting talk. Friedhelm von Mehring from BLW. We are the National Organic Umbrella Organization in Germany. And I already heard something about the Zero Hunger strategy. My question is, how difficult and how much effort did it take to build up the infrastructure to relocate to build up these local value chains, getting the food from the local family farms and giving it to those people who needed it? How difficult was it and how expensive was it to build up the infrastructure?
Can I answer this now?
Yes.
Okay. So thank you. Yeah. It took decades for this being totally and well provided. So we have these all those social policies and social protection policies, and these policies were mainly under the food security umbrella in the beginnings of the 2000s. So all of them usually have this structure by which the federal government provides funding and capacity building, training, and they are usually implemented at local level and at state level. For the policy system that I mentioned to you earlier, the CISAM, we are still on the halfway to get all our 5,000 municipalities joining this system. So we have 27 states in Brazil, 5,000 municipalities, and now more than 2,000 municipalities have joined. And it's been 20 years. But specifically for the school feeding program and the food banks that run the food acquisition program, the public food procurement program, this biggest one, it took a while, usually with this food banks facilities. So funding for states and municipalities organizing food banks, systems for softwares to connect family farmers and family farmers that could source the food procurement programs to the local local governments and municipalities, and also the food supply system in Brazil to open calls for this. Family farmers providers or cooperatives. So it works more with cooperatives. So so it's been a huge effort for years and years of providing funding, of organizing these governance systems between cooperatives, farmers under cooperatives, local governments and facilities, so infrastructure, either hard infrastructure or soft infrastructure. And I think the important message here is that it takes a while, it takes too long, and we cannot stop it. We had in Brazil like 4 years of all these policies stopped, and it hurt. We lost our resilience. And in these last 4 years, we've been trying to rebuild that resilience. So it's this kind of programs that you need to be consistent during time, during a long time period, to make them work in a structured way when the needs are higher.
All right, thank you. Did this answer your question roughly? Great. Is there another question in the room? Yes, we do have 1 or 2 even. 3. I don't know if we have time for so many questions.
Thank you very much for a very, very impressive presentation. My name is Nasser Rehani from Leibniz Institute. We are a research organization in Germany. I found your approach to food system quite strategic in a sense to really get to touch on those leverage points that you can gain a big impact. And we know that this is really challenging. And my question is, you already mentioned about the role of local governments and municipalities, how important they are. But I wonder, how do you set the agenda? How do you bring them on a table together with other important players? For instance, for the midstream actors in the value chain, from the producers to gastronomy, to funders, to science, and to business, and so on. How do you set such a balanced and neutral space for a constructive dialogue to really set the vision, set the strategy, and make a change together with them?
Juliana, if you could briefly answer that question, that would be amazing.
Yes, well, it would take another 20 slides to show how the system works, but I would say that there is a framework for food policy councils in Brazil, either at local level, at state level, and at national level. So in these councils, all these players need to come together and set guidances for interdepartmental or inter-office, multi-offices chamber or agency at the executive branch of each government, and they need to develop a 4-year food strategy. So we work with these main tools for policy development and monitoring: food strategies, policy councils with civil society organizations and other stakeholders. And it takes time to set the agenda. So this is one of the main work we do in Comida, in my organization, to support local governments to have this system flowing well. But yeah, there is a very complex framework for this in Brazil.
And I think it makes sense to look into the work of Comida de Amaña, because they do exactly that, what you asked, to bring these stakeholders together and make sure that the whole value chain is depicted or taken into account when coming up with food policies and food strategies. We had more questions in the front. I know, yeah, she's already giving me the red card.
Yes, thank you for your presentation. Saskia Richards, I work for the Berlin Food Policy Council. We do similar work, but we don't have a public mandate in the same way. I just wanted to ask you that you tell us a little bit more about the division between federal funding and municipality funding, or is this all subsidized through federal system? And also maybe, is it all social funds, or is there also agriculture support funds in this?
It's a mix of them. We have federal funding specific for some social assistance programs, and federal funding for the school meals program, and for the food acquisition program for food assistance. But there is always co-participation, so co-financing from local governments. And the most difficult thing, I would say, is try to understand in a whole budget, public budget for the municipalities, where the money is allocated and how we can develop a more coherent way to set some goals or entry points for food systems that will use budgets from different offices. Usually, like the education office have strong budgets, health offices have strong budget, but social assistance offices have a lower budget. And we try to combine all this with environmental funds and agriculture policies funds that are always funded by federal government and state level. Here for agriculture policies, state governments play a very important role too.
Thank you so much, Juliana. Unfortunately, we have to skip the last question, but maybe you can contact Juliana via mail or we connect you. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us this broader perspective. It was great to see you again. And yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch. Thank you. This is yours.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we've now seen what food access can look like at a systemic level, or what governments can do to support initiatives who make food access more available. And we're now zooming into the kitchen setting to understand how integration and empowerment can look like or can work through food. So I'm really delighted to welcome Caroline Caparossi to the screen, who will start her talk by sharing a video. And Caroline is a social entrepreneur and founder of the Association for the Integration of Women, and is in Modena, Italy. A beautiful city that I've never been to, but it's definitely on my list. After working with Food for Soul, an organization founded by Lara Gilmore and her partner, Chef Massimo Bottura, Caroline founded the Association for the Integration of Women in 2020, together with her business partner, the Canadian chef Jessica Roswell, another very inspiring woman, in response to the lack of economic integration opportunities for migrant women in their community. 2 years later, they launched Roots, a social enterprise restaurant that combines professional gastronomy with long-term integration through training and employment. Her work, or their work, has received several international recognitions, including awards from the United Nations and the world's 50 best restaurants. So I'm very, very happy to have you here with us, Caroline. And as I understood, we'll now directly switch to the video first.
It's a pleasure to be here with you online. Again, my name's Caroline, and I'd like to start a little bit about me, if we can start with the slides. So I grew up in the United States, being very proud of my cultural heritage of being a third-generation Italian migrant, or an Italian American. And food was a big part of how I identified with my heritage, so far removed that I didn't grow up in Italy, I didn't speak Italian. And my family was very American in many ways, but food was something that had remained through the generations. I grew up hearing stories about how my great-grandparents had come with very little, but how their hard work and sacrifice eventually was because they had this vision and this extreme courage to achieve their dreams. At the time when they arrived in the early 1900s, there was a lot of prejudice against Italians. So they didn't teach any of their children to speak the language. This story and being proud of them and feeling lucky that because of their hard work, I was able to have the opportunities that I had, made me very empathetic towards the struggles that first-generation migrants experience at that time directly around me. So students in my classes, their parents, but also, of course, all over the world. And so I decided to study Spanish. And in college, I started working at nonprofits that worked with Latino immigration studies. So in 2017, the year after I graduated, together with my boyfriend, who's now my husband, who's Italian, I moved to Italy. And although I thought maybe it would have been easy and I thought that I was Italian, I quickly realized that I wasn't. I was very American. And it was the first time that I experienced for myself what it was like to have to start over from a career perspective, to learn a new language, to learn the cultural norms and everything. And so this is Modena, the city where which we called home. Maybe some of you have heard of it. It's a scenic, traditional town in Emilia-Romagna, and it's famous for balsamic vinegar, Parmesan cheese, and of course, Chef Massimo Bottura. But I think most people who visit Modena, and certainly those who live there, would not necessarily know walking through the center that Modena is home to people from 143 different nationalities. Almost the whole world is present in Modena. My journey to becoming a social entrepreneur started one day when I was walking to work, when I met a young woman who would later become my friend, named Ella. I would walk to work across the center, and when we realized that we were both 25 years old, both English speakers, and both arrived in Modena the same year, we became friends very naturally, and she shared her story. That she left Nigeria with absolutely no connections, no certainty, came to Italy because she had this dream that she wanted to be the first woman in her family to work. I found myself in front of a woman who reminded me a bit of how I had always imagined my great-grandmother, who had so much courage, charismatic, intelligent, the energy of a young woman who wants to establish herself. But in those 3 years, while I had been able to find an internship that led to a job, she had not been able to realize her dream. At that point, I started to do some research. I had in my mind that the migration system was very different in Italy and that my studies I had done in the US wouldn't have been applicable career-wise. But I realized that the struggles that migrant women face as a community are global. In Italy and in Europe, young migrant women between 25 and 35 are one of the most disadvantaged groups to economically integrate because of all of the intersecting barriers that they experience. So Ella's story was not the exception. She wasn't unlucky, but it was the rule. In 2020, after talking to a lot of nonprofits, talking to a lot of women, and getting together with some of my friends, we, in our free time after work and on lunch breaks, opened a nonprofit association with the mission statement, providing resources for women to spread roots and flourish. We wanted to create a model that would connect women like Ella with jobs, but necessary to get more satisfying jobs with the certified training and the community support. Because in the case of Ella, we experienced that when we helped her get a job, it wasn't just access to the employment, it was all of the difficulties that someone experiences when they're first working in a new country. So from reading the job contract that's in Italian, that's in legal terminology, it's very inaccessible, to reading a paycheck, to navigating cultural norms. So we wanted to fill that gap as well. But at the same time, equally important was giving them a space to showcase their culture so that the city of Modena could also realize that they have something to offer as well. So it would be an integration model in two directions, let's say. We met with a lot of nonprofits that were working in the community. We specifically started collaborating with Caritas, the local Catholic church. They had a commercial kitchen, a small commercial kitchen, and they let us use it on Wednesdays. So we were ready to go. We had 4 women from Nigeria signed up for our first pilot cooking class in April of 2020, which is right when Italy shut down for the first quarantine for COVID. So we knew at the time that many migrant women also had sewing skills. We saw the boom of homemade face masks. And we also knew that migrant women were affected in a really important way by workforce closures because they have a higher percentage of irregular job contracts. So let's say they were the first to be left at home without any certainty of receiving any money in that period. So we knew it was more important than ever to do something, and we didn't want to stop. So instead, we launched a campaign where we were paying women at home who had seamstress skills to make face masks. You could make a donation to the cause, and we would send you one of our masks that were these really beautiful cotton face masks as a thank you. By the end of the campaign, this nonprofit that no one really knew about, there was a lot of community solidarity at that time as well that certainly helped. We had raised over 20,000 euros and employed over 800 hours of work from different women in our community. In September, we finally were able to go into the kitchen. We launched our pilot program, and we applied for an award, not an award, but we applied for a competition through Instagram for the United Nations Major Group for Children and Youth. We pitched our project at the Global Migration Forum, and we won the award for our model for the culinary training program and Roots restaurant that I'll tell you about next. Thanks to this recognition, a group of young people without any prior experience in terms of running an organization or accessing funding or managing budgets, we were able to get our first grant, our first corporate sponsorship, and the city of Modena assigned us a public space that was already retrofitted to become a restaurant. So in February 2022, about 2 years later, after we started the whole adventure, we had our first cohort of trainees that were registered for the program, Mercy from Cameroon, Fanta from Guinea, and Zoira from Tunisia. They began training in our kitchen while we were doing the finishing touches on the space. And in April, we opened our restaurant. This is a picture of them cutting the ribbon together with the mayor of Modena. Since then, Roots is a social enterprise restaurant that's been open from Tuesdays to Saturdays, and it hosts a 360-degree training program that's paid for migrant women who are passionate about food and who want to establish careers in this sector. Each year, we've grown with how many people have come to the restaurant. We now are serving more than 9,000 paying clients. and therefore we're able to self-sustain in terms of funding Roots program. Roots wants to be a platform for migrant women to showcase their skills and to create community connections in Modena, where otherwise two different groups may not come into contact. We offer a set menu that represents the countries where the women who are in that training program are from. And our dining team and the entire concept around this, everything that's designed around this menu, from communications and social media to the experience of the diner and what the waiters and waitresses are telling you, is giving a great respect and value for culture and food traditions. We know that we've done a great job when, for example, we'll have clients that have come and eat and stand up and say, I had no idea how delicious Nigerian food could be. So this is how, through food, is a very powerful tool to be able to influence cultural change in hearts and minds. We aimed to have our social impact also reflected within our organizational structure. So one of the things we've spent a lot of time and effort doing is to grow our roots deep, grow in a deep way rather than focus on expansion necessarily of the model. One of the biggest game changers for us along our journey was establishing our organizational values. We did this in our second year so that now we are hiring people. When it comes to hiring, to orientation, to training, experience has become naturally less important for us, but we're looking for individuals who are highly aligned with our mission and values. This is creating returns for us that are in time and money, because we're seeing that the experience of the trainees is wonderful, the staff is staying longer, and we're really able to live the vision that we're putting forward. Right now, our team is made up of 12 women from 11 different countries. So our values have also been important because it's become our shared culture together and our common language in some way, because all of us are second language Italian speakers, besides our one Italian staff member. We all come from different backgrounds, but so this was also very necessary in running a restaurant and trying to run a restaurant that performs at a certain level with such a diverse team. In that sense, our diversity has really become our superpower, which is what we are also trying to showcase to the world, let's say, as an example. On our team as well, half of our team now started with us as trainees in the program, including our chef, our sous chef, and our restaurant manager. So our whole middle management are graduates from our program. Just to speak a little bit about the training program that the women take part in, so we now have two fiscal entities, our social enterprise restaurant and our association, AIW, that we started in 2020. AIW also has a dedicated team. It's a small team with 3 people, 1 hired staff person, 2 interns, plus a network of 24 volunteers. And they are the ones that are coordinating the program for the women who take part. The program includes experience working in the restaurant, lessons from highly skilled trainers, which include trainers at the Michelin level. For example, also teaching things that they will need to learn for their future job placements. So how to make pasta, for example, how to read a paycheck, a contract. So we have a mix of kitchen and classroom training. Again, the trainees are paid it's a government training stipend for their tirocinio or internship experience. It also includes individual mentorship. Our team member is a certified counselor, so each woman who does the program gets an individual attention every month to work on setting her goals and progressing through the program. And this year, we also launched a volunteer network providing individual Italian conversation classes for additional language support. So far, we've worked with 58 women from 20 countries. And a surveying that we do frequently, we just finished this month, tells us that 80% of them are currently employed. We stay in touch with our graduates who become our graduate network, members of our association, volunteers, and ambassadors. For example, when we are asked to give interviews or press, we love or to participate in local events as much as we can. We're involving our ambassadors and graduates so that we can also give them a platform and have more diverse and women representation in our city of Modena and in Italy in general. And this year, one of our graduates, Waira, who's part of our first cohort in the very first picture, is becoming AIW's vice president of the association. When we look to the future, we hope to be able to create systemic change, influence how migrants are perceived in society, and ultimately create the social soil where all women can spread roots and flourish. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Caroline, for sharing these beautiful stories and for taking us on the journey of Roots and the Association of Integration of Women and your own journey as well. And for giving us an insight into the values of your organization and the achievements that you can look back to or look at from the past years. And I'm very curious to see what the future also holds for you, because I think there's still so much to achieve and so many people, so many women to support. You know the drill, you know the game. Jetzt ist die Möglichkeit wieder für euch Fragen zu stellen. Ich hätte sonst auch noch welche vorbereitet, aber ich kann mir gut vorstellen, dass die eine oder der andere vielleicht etwas fragen möchte. I'm just looking through the room to see if there are any questions for you. Yeah, we have one here in the front.
Hi, my name is Jose. I'm making my first steps into the gastro industry. But I wanted to ask, first of all, congratulations, and it's a remarkable job, and I think it's super notable. But you mentioned 80% of the graduates are currently employed. Do you have also a program or an initiative for business startup or venture entrepreneurial moving? Because I think it's weaving the I don't know, foundations of social integration. It's also through business ownership. So I just wanted to know if there's something that you have in your horizon.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yes, so we actually last year we worked with a local, this is something that we've wanted to do for a while, just because a lot of women that we work with have some business management experience from their home countries, and many of whom dream to start something of their own here in Italy. So we started last year to do research into what a model could look like and what a financial model could look like, also partnering up with a university of management engineering to model that out for us. What we've started to pilot is the first step of this is probably going to look like business mentorship for the women who are verbally interested in starting something, which is designed to help them take the first steps to think more about their idea in a more deep way before spending any time moving on to the bureaucratic and fiscal elements and legal elements of starting a business in Italy. I will tell you that Italy is not very friendly for entrepreneurship. It's quite difficult, and it's one of the lowest entrepreneurship rates in Europe because of that. So what we're also looking at is what types of entrepreneurship could be easier for someone without much access to capital to start with, that's lower risk and that's easier to experiment with while they're continuing to gain skills.
Thank you so much for that answer. I can definitely, I know how hard it is to start a business in Italy. I also studied in Italy, and I have some friends who also wanted to do that, and face challenges that are it's a bit easier in Germany or in other European states. Is there another question for Caroline? Not that I see. Oh yeah, we have one. Otherwise, I do also have a list, but I would like to give the audience the first chance.
Yeah, Friedhelm from BLW, National Organic Umbrella Organization. A big problem in Germany trying to do anything for migrants is that they are often not allowed to work. So, which is of course completely ridiculous, but this is a huge challenge. Do you have the same challenge in Italy? And if so, how do you cope with that challenge? How to allow these women to actually have a job?
That's actually one of the questions I also noted down.
Sorry, my cat. Yeah, so that's also a problem in Italy. People who are in the kind of a state of limbo with their documents that don't have the legal permission to work. Unfortunately, with people in that situation, it puts pressure. I think that the solutions and the projects are for nonprofits that, at least in Italy, you'll have nonprofits that are having unpaid but programs that can help someone in that period of time, hoping and knowing that that period of time is temporary. Sometimes it's long and frustrating, but I think that what we can be doing, because there's no business in denying that that's not part of, like, there's no point in denying that that's not a frustrating part of the migration process right now in Italy, at least, is what can we do to make it so that that time waiting for documents does not kind of break someone's motivation and confidence. Our project is really specific because we're working with women who do have the documents to work. That means that they have a permit to stay, a permit of residence, or an asylum seeker. This is also because, since it's an employment program, we want, after the 4 months of graduation, for them to be able to go immediately into the workforce. So we find that there's still many, many, many women who have documents to work, but who are unable to be hired for various reasons, or if they are, the job doesn't go forward for other reasons. So our program is not, it's not a program. Yeah, so I think it's just about, we're working with a very specific part of the population that's anyway large enough for us to run the program. So to give you an idea, we had 20 spaces in our program last year, and we had over 100 women who applied, all of whom had a permit to work, but who were still unable to find a job. In terms of how we can in terms of how, because we represent the employer in a lot of ways, we are running a restaurant, we're also trainers, and it's a very particular restaurant. But I think that this is where the multi-sectoral approach and partnerships and perspectives are important too, because I do think that there are ways that waiting time where people aren't able to work could be preparatory and could be motivational in the ways that they can be, so that hopefully by the time that these individuals do get their documents, they have options in front of them.
All right, thank you so much for sharing that, Caroline. And looking at the time, I now have to say goodbye to you, unfortunately, since we're moving to the next speaker. So thank you again. Thank you so much. This applause is for you.
Thank you very much.
Because we have another speaker before the break who's actually joining us here on the stage and not on the screen, because we invited Sophia from Amsterdam, who came by train today. And since we now looked at the setting of the kitchen, we're moving to the dining hall, more or less. Try to understand look what does it mean for people and communities in everyday life to have food as a tool to bring them together, and what this area of gastronomy can do for for social interaction. So let's all welcome Zofia Zukowski on stage. I hope I pronounced that well. So Zofia is a project manager at De Sering.
De Sering.
De Sering. A People's Kitchen in Amsterdam. She's originally, she joined as a volunteer after studying environmental policy and became part of the core team to develop and coordinate the project that strengthens community through food. And De Sering is a really, really great example of how a food space can be shaped collectively by and for the community. And I'm very, very happy that you can join us here personally and to hear from the project.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Also very, very excited to be here in person with you. So I think that we can jump right into it. So I was already introduced a little bit. So I think actually I can just get right into talking about the Sitting in our community kitchen and what we do. So what is the Sitting? So Sitting, first and foremost, is a Volkskeuken, or a people's kitchen, or a community kitchen in English, founded by brothers Dan and David Door, who are pictured here and would be very upset with me for using this old of a photo. But a people's kitchen means essentially that we function largely as a restaurant, but we function also as a shared community space for everyone to come and have a safe, affordable meal, and also gather and come together and facilitate social connection and cohesion. Our food is vegan, and it always will be, and always has been. And I'll get into a little bit more about why that is quite soon. We are also an activist kitchen, which means that we go out into our communities and provide food for local activists in and actually beyond Amsterdam as well, by catering for activist groups that are fighting for a better and more just Amsterdam. And we also very strongly pride ourselves on our volunteer community, as everything that we do would not be possible without our volunteers. We are powered by the love and work of a couple thousand volunteers, actually, that help us do what we do. And lastly, we're also a public space, which means that after our lunch and dinner service, not only do we serve food, but we also function as a space for people to run their own events, whether that is film screenings, workshops, techno parties, weddings, and everything and anything in between. So we do this at now two locations, Sitting West in the west of Amsterdam, and Sitting Centraal in the center. And we also have a fine dining, actually, restaurant arm of the Sitting Tree, which was founded originally in the same space as the Sitting Community Kitchen to finance and keep the Sitting open, and now functions as a standalone restaurant, as does the Volkskeuken, but they remain very closely interconnected. So what is the Sitting's mission, and what needs do we actually fill in Amsterdam? So we provide, as I mentioned, affordable food and event space. Anywhere people can pay anywhere from €2.50 to €18 for a meal. We try to work with our calendar as much as possible to make sure that we can serve as many people as possible, and also organize as many community events as possible. So that means a lot of work for a very small team, but all deeply, deeply rewarding activities. We work with a donation-based menu to keep costs low and ensure that not only as the cost of living goes up, but also the complexity of living, that our community in Amsterdam has actually somewhere to turn, and that is to us. So functioning as a hub is really, really crucial to us, especially in a time of very widespread social isolation and loneliness in the Netherlands, and arguably globally as well. We see our space as particularly important to foster connections amongst working class and marginalized communities, students, everybody who is in need of broader social cohesion and support, to work as a space where, as we say in Dutch, iedereen is welkom, where everyone is welcome, as long as they are respectful of the people around us. And lastly, we also very strongly like to connect food, culture, and activism to offer avenues for Amsterdam to improve and create a future where everyone can advance and live a prosperous life. So what gaps do we fill in Amsterdam? As I mentioned, we fill a need by going to our communities and serving food to free up time for people to work on the causes that are important to them. We also fill a gap of providing accessible and affordable nightlife also in Amsterdam. A safe space where everybody can come and enjoy themselves, but also experience everything that a very deeply diverse community has to offer. And of course, we function as a space that is affordable for people to come and eat, which maybe some of you in Berlin can sympathize, but Amsterdam is getting more and more expensive by the day, and there are fewer and fewer places like this, so it's extremely important to us that this is what we do day in and day out to make sure that nobody is being priced or pushed out of our own restaurant and our little corner of the world. So how does this actually work? So this is the exact explainer that we have posted in our restaurant for our donation-based menu, where €2.50 will cover the cost of your meal. If you contribute a bit more, labor, rent, and utilities of the sitting, and €18 or more will help to grow our community and expand more and more opportunities. We work as a sort of buffet style, so we also don't run table service, and that way keep labor costs low. To offer 2 soups and 2 main courses, all you can eat, and a toppings bar as well to make your food a little bit more personal. We work with a small amount of front of house and kitchen staff as well. That is essential because to keep sort of the glue of the sitting together is absolutely our staff. And we also work, as I mentioned, with daily volunteers who help us do everything from just kitchen prep to running events to physically maintaining our space and everything and anything in between. We are designed to keep food waste as minimal as possible, so carefully tailoring our own recipes, and basically keeping our operations sort of as tight as we can by stretching our resources to serve thousands of meals a week, something that we're very, very now quite proud of. So what do guests get out of the sitting? So much, much more than a meal, of course. Our shared tables offer them community and the space to connect with each other and with their neighbors. So it's not private dining so much as you are connected immediately in a dining room style space. Of course, our event programming offers them parties that they can enjoy. Our volunteers, who also frequently attend as guests, and you see in the top right there, get not only a place to contribute, but also to develop themselves, develop their skills, develop their interests in a space where they can give back to the sitting, and that makes its way all the way down to our guests to create a space that really has as much love in it as we can possibly manage. And everything that our volunteers create, as I said, goes back into our community. The meal that sits in front of our guests is possible exclusively by their contribution, which facilitates the work of our staff as well. And that's something that actually our guests are acutely aware of, and that we make them aware of by doing a little speech during dinner time where we introduce the community and the concept, and has been quite well received in our community. So I want to share just briefly one particular story to represent them all, which is a renovation that occurred in early 2025. Sitting was at a pivotal moment where our fine dining restaurant Testtafel was about to move out of our space and expand. And at that time, we were also hit with a number of difficulties in our kitchen, where it became quite clear that our popularity was, it's a good problem to have, but outstripping our resources. We were dealing with very faulty equipment. We were dealing with, quite frankly, a lack of knowledge at that time, but with a well-meaning heart, of course. So we put a call out to our community. We said that we need to completely redo our kitchen, but we can't stay closed for long if we are to stay open for long. So we closed for the span of a week and put out a call, which was answered by hundreds of volunteers, both who donated their physical time and labor, but also financially to the sitting as well, to completely break down and renovate and restore our kitchen in just the span of 1 week. And anyone who's done a renovation knows why we're particularly proud of this moment, and why we're particularly proud of the way that our community showed up for us, and the way that we show up back for them. We not only that, but actually everything that was donated to the sitting by the public, we are in the process of repaying. So we just made a first batch of repayments to people who donated to us just a couple weeks ago. So from going from being nearly closed to being able to pay tens of thousands of euros back to the people that supported us, we really, it means the world to us, of course. What makes our project a success? The fact that we cook with plant-based food and in large batches means that as we scale up to a lot of people, our costs don't go up by all that much, because making soup for 200 people is actually not much more difficult than 100. But we do make more money that contributes back into our community and allows us to do what we do. And of course, our mission is very important. We wear this on our sleeve, as you might be able to tell. To reach people that come to Forge Community, but also that just happen to wander in and come for a dinner. We try to keep our costs as low as possible, but keep our minds open to the possibilities. And of course, once more, our staff, volunteers, and community essentially make the sitting what it is. So from just in the past, we've founded in 2019 as just a small, very, very small kitchen that was serving meals once a week to now, as I mentioned, serving thousands of meals a week and serving brand new guests from all over the Netherlands and hopefully the world. And through just a series of moves to various locations and admittedly a lot of luck, by reaching then our renovation in last year, being able to completely redo our kitchen, move our testtafel in order to to a bigger space. We've made quite the transformation in the past 6 years, and are really, really excited to see, of course, where this takes us in 2026 and beyond. So creating a space like the Sitting, I'm telling you, of course, a success story, but it has also come with quite a bit of pain, chaos, frustration. But we like to not encourage it, but to embrace it and to roll with the punches, of course. Our focus on our mission and community is very central to what we do, to keep our core locations running and also to take our organization to our neighborhoods, and actually also here today, because this is the first time the Sitting as an organization has ever gone abroad. So if you're interested in cultivating something similar or even hearing just more about this, and of course it might be easy for me to say, but I would say to don't be afraid to wear your mission on your sleeve, particularly if you're a social organization, to remember, of course, who you're doing it for and why you're doing it is an easy thing to forget. But your community will find you. They will come. Build it and they will come, as they say. So, of course, keep your dreams big if you can, your costs low, but be prepared to stretch and shape your resources at times. And lastly, also, I would say to embrace the unconventional. The Sitting is a very unconventional place that works, I believe, not in spite of, but because of its quirks. Yeah, keep in mind that we'd like to embrace what others would write off. And actually, our logo in the bottom right over there is an attempt to represent a squaring the circle or achieving the impossible. So we hope that, of course, that one day that you will come and visit us at the Sitting in Amsterdam, or maybe hopefully soon in Berlin or in a city near you. And I would love to welcome your questions and thoughts, of course. And thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much. I wasn't aware that this was a world premiere.
Oh yeah, our debut.
Wow, yeah, nice. Also, what a beautiful success story of what a community, or what the power of a community can actually achieve. Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah.
I was wondering, since you shared so many nice pictures and all these nice stories, who comes to eat? Like, what is the mix of people who we would meet, since we all now booked our train tickets to Amsterdam?
Of course.
Who would we meet in the dining hall?
Yeah, you would meet probably me. I'm there most days a week. But you would also meet everyone really from, you might think it's just students who have a small budget, but really, and we love our students, but it is students, it is people that work in offices nearby, it is people that are coming to visit, it is family, it's friends, it's loved ones, it's people that are looking for something really where they can get in contact and foster connections with other people. You would meet activists, you would meet academics, scientists, researchers, you would meet people who work for the gemeente or the municipality, Amsterdam, and for the government. You would meet, I think, people from most walks of life. You just might have to turn to your neighbor when you come to eat with us and ask where they come from and what they do and why they're there. Yeah, I would say that well, of course, while we do have our repeat guests and people that are there quite frequently, we also, every single day, people come up to us and say that they had no idea that a place like this existed or a place like this could exist, that they're hearing about this organization for the first time. And so you might see repeat faces and you might see brand new ones. We think that's part of what makes it what it is.
And do you initiate exchange at the table, or does it come naturally through sharing food?
It generally comes naturally. We do, as I mentioned, also have like a lot of event programming where organizers do facilitate that. We, as the Sering, don't actually like organize our own events. We just function as the space for people to come and organize events there. So we leave most of the facilitation element up to the event organizers. But it happens, I think, both ways, both in a facilitated way and just organically by function of people being seated together.
Mm-hmm. And last question, when we look at the scale, the payment scale, I think a lot of people who think about implementing such a scale, they're scared of people only paying the lowest price. What's the average that people actually do pay?
Yeah, so our weekly average is around, if I recall correctly, about €7.60. So definitely quite far from the €2.50 minimum. We do have people that come in and pay the €2.50, and we're extremely happy with that. We have people that come in and pay 18, 20 euros a meal simply because they can. We had someone last week come and donate 100 euros for their meal because they were so enthused. Granted, that's pretty expensive for a soup and a main course. But of course, it really is so appreciated, and people know that it goes away towards help paying for other people that can't afford to pay as much for their meal. So that might have skewed our averages that week. Yeah. But we're really, really happy with what we're able to do and what people are able to bring. We'll take, of course, anything, as I mentioned, the profit that we make goes back into the restaurant. So everything that's donated helps to grow the organization in one way or another.
Amazing. All right. Thank you so much for sharing your story and for this uplifting presentation. I really loved it. And since Sophia is going to stay here for the rest of the night, we're not going to open the space for questions now, but I invite you to just approach her and ask your question personally.
Yeah, I don't bite.
Which you can do in the upcoming break. Also wir gehen jetzt rüber zur Pause, und weil wir für die Präsentation etwas mehr Zeit eingeräumt haben, als wir eigentlich eingeplant hatten, kürzen wir die Pause um 5 Minuten, also auf 15 Minuten, und dann kommen wir in 15 Minuten wieder hier zusammen für den zweiten Teil, für das Gespräch mit Kavita und dann für den Markt der Möglichkeiten. Also bedient euch jetzt gerne an den Getränken, an den Snacks, und dann freuen wir uns, euch gleich in 15 Minuten wieder hier zu sehen. Bis gleich. So, ihr habt den Gong gehört. Das war das Zeichen, dass die Pause jetzt langsam zu Ende geht. Schnappt euch gerne noch was zu trinken oder eine kleine Tüte Popcorn. Und dann kommt bitte wieder in den Raum, weil jetzt der zweite Teil des Abends startet. Und ich freue mich riesig, jetzt hier schon auf der Bühne Kavita Melu bei mir Perspektiven begrüßen zu dürfen. Nachdem wir Perspektiven aus Brasilien, Italien und den Niederlanden gehört haben, holen wir das Ganze jetzt nach Berlin. Und die schwierige Aufgabe, die verschiedenen Impulse miteinander zu verbinden, die habe ich heute einfach mal ausgelagert und habe das einfach mal Kavita so rübergeschoben. Kavita ist kulinarische Kuratorin, Kulturanthropologin und Community-Organisatorin und prägt die Berliner Food-Szene seit vielen, vielen Jahren. Ihr kennt wahrscheinlich den Street Food Thursday in der Markthalle. Den hat Kavita zum Beispiel mitbegründet und hat ihre Finger auch in vielen weiteren extrem spannenden und wichtigen Projekten im Spiel, die alle irgendwie mit der Schnittstelle Essen, Migration, Kultur und Unternehmertum arbeiten. Und heute gibt sie uns einen Einblick, was sich so in Sachen Social Gastronomy in Berlin in den letzten Jahren entwickelt hat und was ihr Blick und ihre Perspektive auch darauf ist. Das Ganze wird wieder auf Englisch stattfinden, also switche ich jetzt wieder. Kavita, I'm so happy that you're here and that you're joining us and that you are sharing your view, your perspective on the developments in Berlin and taking the difficult task to bring it all together from me.
Thank you very much for inviting me again, and I'm happy that I can take part this time.
Yes, thank you.
And also, thank you to the speakers who came before. They were really amazing, interesting talks, and I'm really happy to come after the last talk because you're right, I will talk a little bit about what's happening in Berlin, in how I see social food projects evolving. But I thought it could be interesting because when I was started to think about, okay, what would be interesting to talk about today, I had a moment of realization that I've actually lived here for nearly 20 years, which is wild. And I have the unique perspective, I think, of nearly being here for 20 years to say that I am a Berliner now, maybe? And I certainly still consider myself a Londoner and a British person. So with that position, I want to share my kind of insider-outsider perspectives and not to hark onto the old days. But I think one of the things that I found so incredible when I first moved here, apart from the disappointment of not having great Indian food and not having other great Asian food, let's say, which has drastically changed now, 20 years on, there was something which was incredible that was happening in this city. And that was like the level of community-oriented projects. So in the Keats that I was living in, I was surrounded by supermarkets that were cooperatives, that were people-led, that were community-led. And this was such a difference from me coming from London at the time, where the only supermarkets and the new supermarkets that were opening were Tesco's, Sainsbury's, all of the big brands. And there was something that spoke to this very special energy of the people in this city that have been creating food solutions, community food solutions, in a city where there's been a history of state neglect. And when I moved here, I think, obviously, I also came with a new movement of people over here, and with that came the beginnings of gentrification. And I think I'm very lucky to have been able to participate in a lot of the food projects of that generation. So the food projects like supper clubs and urban restaurants, which none of those were calling themselves social projects, social food projects, but the level at which these places were creating, or these people were creating, alternative spaces for communities to connect, to have access to delicious food, to have access to spaces where you're not isolated. I think of those nowadays only in social terms, like the urban gardening projects, which now we kind of like maybe take for granted when we see these like, you know, Princess and Garden style crates in every little space that we have in like our urban spaces in the city. Those come from a legacy of people in this city saying we're going to create spaces for people to connect with growing food again, and to create spaces for people to learn and have knowledge about how important it is for us to remain connected to food growing. And I really think that this was a very unique and special value and quality to this city. And so while I missed having Indian food, and while I missed maybe my favorite restaurants in London, what I gained was a whole new perspective on thinking about how food can connect us, and also a reminder that when the state is absent, that people and people power still have the possibility to create all of these very much needed third spaces. So yeah, that was a little bit of a rant, but the reason why I'm thinking about that now, obviously, is because we have been, but are particularly now entering a real state of deep austerity in Berlin. And I think I'm saying this and going to share one of my learnings of the past couple of years, thinking that maybe there are people in the audience who are social entrepreneurs or people who are coming up with food ideas that have a social angle. And I think it's important to remember that while the funding might not be there, there is still like community, and we still have that, and we still have like a legacy out there. We still have people who also created incredible social food projects when funding wasn't available. Yeah, so one thing, let me have a look at my notes, because I've like gone off note again, but what did I want to say? Yeah, so I think the important thing to think about when we come up with our ideas, right, of a solution to all of these social food insecurities and the food issues that we're facing in the city, is to remember that there are communities of people who've always kind of been neglected. And within those communities, you can find solutions. We don't need to have to reinvent or reinterpret things every time. And I think it's now more important than ever before to really be in community with these folks, right? So to pass the microphone onto them and understand how they have created resilient systems in the past. Because unfortunately, it's the folks that suffer the most who know what they need. So just to give you a concrete example of what I'm talking about, so it doesn't sound so abstract. At the beginning of last year, I was commissioned with my sister, who is actually a public food policy expert. We were commissioned by a charity in Birmingham in the United Kingdom, where we're from, to do research on social supermarkets, because in Birmingham we have a massive food security issue, which has been intensely exacerbated by 14 years of Tory austerity measures. So public cutbacks, lack of funding, no money to support important projects that help people. And the charity that had commissioned us, they'd been running an emergency food bank since COVID. It's in a part of town which is not far from where I went to school. And they initially created it thinking that once COVID is over, the program would be over. But of course, and I think there are some people here who also run food banks, know that that was simply not the case. And what happened after COVID or during COVID is that they realized that actually the majority of people who'd become reliant on the food bank were working families. So families who at least one of the adults was working could no longer afford to nourish their homes and their children. And so this charity came to us and told us that they are no longer getting money from the city. They have to think about a new way to create a sustainable model to make sure that they can support the community in the future. And they wanted to think about a model of a social supermarket, where they have a supermarket for the people, not for profit. And we were given the task of researching a lot of different social supermarkets that exist already in the country and outside, and come up with some insights that could inform their concept when they were in the planning phase. Happy to share some of those insights with you later, if afterwards in conversation. But there's one interview in particular that has really stuck with me. We did 17 in-depth interviews. We looked at 80 different projects. And one of these interviews was with a guy who was a famous chef, and he had a really strong vision to create a social supermarket for the people. And he was given in the middle of central London, in a unique area where you have a lot of poverty and a lot of wealth. He was given a premises at highly subsidized rent. And he wanted to create an affordable supermarket that allowed all sections of community to shop there. There was going to be a two-price system, so you could buy the food full price, or you could dedicate a few hours a month to working in store and in return get discounted or more affordable groceries. So his vision was so strong, and the country was so excited about this prospect that he even had a TV show about his endeavor, and he had leading retail experts join him to create a model in his space. But despite having all of that, he couldn't make the concept work. And the project essentially failed. And in his own words, he told me it failed because he couldn't convince the low-income members of the community to use his supermarket. And that was for two reasons. Firstly, there wasn't anyone from the low-income community that worked in the team. And second of all, in the absence of having people not from the community within his team, he didn't have real relationships with any members of the community either. And because of that, what he didn't know was that the low-income groups in this neighborhood were mainly, you could categorize them as low-income migrant groups, established groups from Bangladesh, Eritrea, and Ethiopia, who've been living in this area for decades. And what he didn't know is that the women within these communities decades ago had set up essentially a social supermarket. They have been bulk buying products for the families in the neighborhood that were delivered. They had a logistics program. They were buying bulk products from incredible producers. These were healthy products. These were culturally relevant products. And they had their own social supermarket system that was off the grid. You know, nobody knew about it. There wasn't a Google review. There wasn't a website. But it was something that actually worked for the community. And that was their survival strategy, because these people are a part of a minority group which is neglected by state institutions. And guess what? These people will always find a way to survive, to thrive, and to figure out solutions that work for them. And so in the end, he said that he realized the project failed because, and I quote, "It was my dream, it wasn't the dream of my community." And this was a key learning from all the research that we did. Again, there were more. I'm happy to share another time. But really what we realized is the most successful of these social projects are moving away from charity to co-curated community solutions. And all of the projects that were curated to solve problems, but with the people who are really living what those problems mean, were the most successful. And I'm saying that because what is great to see now, I think, in Berlin, when I think about what's coming or the projects that I know in my food world that are definitely different to what's happened the last decades, is that there is a big movement towards this idea of creating spaces which are really community-oriented. So to give you an example of it, I would say the Community Migrant Workers Kitchen, which was set up, self-organized by the delivery drivers that have unionized from Lieferando and Volt. They have set up a canteen where basically they meet to talk about labor issues, to discuss visa problems, to also connect over education, visa issues, and so on. This is self-organized and extremely, extremely useful for the people who it affects, obviously. Another really inspiring community organization that is set up is the Berlin Gastronomy Solidarity Network. Maybe some of you have heard about it already, but this is a huge network now of hospitality workers and restaurant owners who are committed to integrating political responsibility in their food work. So all that to say, I'm running out of time, sorry, is that there are some great movements within the food world, even amongst people who are not necessarily labeling what they do a social project. And those are just a couple that I've mentioned now, because actually we're going to hear about a lot more from some of the people in the audience as well. I'm going to end there. If anybody's got any questions, I'm around. That's it.
I think we can leave that here because I have my on-stage microphone. Thank you so much, Kavita, for sharing your perspective and for giving us a bigger picture of what Berlin also went through, what development Berlin went through as a city, and maybe what we can also learn from Birmingham. To give us maybe also a vision that even during times where it seems very difficult to build something, to achieve something because support from the government might not be as big as it used to be in the past. That if you find the right people and if you have your mission, that you can still create something meaningful. And what I also get from the story that you shared is that it's really important to really know what the problem is that you're trying to solve, to really understand that, and to also understand your target group or your community to actually build something for them, and to not just try to, in German we say überstülpen. Thank you for this inspiring talk. Und wir möchten jetzt vom Zuhören, wir haben jetzt sehr viel zugehört, ins Gespräch kommen. Und ich habe euch ja versprochen, wir haben einen Minimarkt der Möglichkeiten und ganz viele super spannende und engagierte lokale Initiativen eingeladen, die jetzt hier schon hinten im Raum ihre Tische aufgebaut haben und bereit sind, euch davon zu erzählen, was sie in Berlin eigentlich umsetzen und wie sie mit mit Essen, mit Ernährung Brücken bauen, wie sie Gemeinschaften zusammenbringen und wie sie ja auch an einer besseren Zukunft und an besseren Ernährungssystemen arbeiten. Und damit ihr wisst, wen ihr so ansteuern könnt, machen wir so eine kleine Quick-Pitch-Runde, um noch so einen englischen Begriff reinzuwerfen. Berenice hat schon das Mikrofon bereit. Und wir würden jetzt mal einfach rundum oder reihum gehen. Und ihr habt alle 1 Minute, nicht schlimm, wenn ihr euch noch kürzer fassen könnt, Zeit, um einmal zu sagen, wer ihr seid und was ihr macht, beziehungsweise warum die Leute an euren Tisch oder wofür die Leute an euren Tisch kommen können. Und als kleine Aufgabe fürs Publikum, ich würde euch mitgeben, mit mindestens 2 Initiativen in ein tieferes Gespräch zu kommen, vielleicht eine, die euch einfach inspiriert und eine, wo ihr denkt, dass ihr vielleicht auch selber mal aktiv werden könntet. Okay.
Ja, also ich bin Saskia Richards vom Ernährungsrat Berlin und stehe hier mit meiner Kollegin Lelia Kabe von der Humboldt-Universität. Der Ernährungsrat hat sich dem Thema Ernährungsarmut und inklusiven Ernährungsumgebungen angenommen. Wir kümmern uns also darum, dass Berlin die politischen Entscheidungen, Investitionen fest um die öffentliche Infrastruktur rund ums Thema Zugang zu Nahrung zu verbessern. Und wir haben eine ganze Anzahl von Projekten, die ich jetzt gar nicht im Einzelnen aufführen werde, zusammen mit der Humboldt-Universität, die das auch wissenschaftlich begleitet. Vielleicht als Teaser nur soweit, es geht auch um Gemüse auf Rezept, also wie kann Präventivmittel Patientinnen die Möglichkeit zu mehr Obst und Gemüse geben.
Dankeschön. Ich bin Simon Rimkus von Yeşil Chamber und genau, Yeşil Chamber ist ein relativ kleiner Verein, der sich mit interkultureller Umweltbildung beschäftigt. Und wir haben ein sehr, sehr breites Potpourri an verschiedenen Projekten, die wir umsetzen. Unter anderem haben wir ein Projekt in letzter Zeit durchgeführt, was Empowerment für gesunde und klimagerechte Ernährung heißt. Da haben wir viel mit dem Quartiersmanagement zusammengearbeitet in Neukölln und haben da verschiedene Projekte gestartet und eben gerade von Kavita den Input, wir haben das probiert anders zu machen. Wir haben probiert, die Community mit einzubeziehen. Dementsprechend haben wir unter anderem MultiplikatorInnen Schulungen im Kiez durchgeführt, konzipiert und da probiert einfach die Menschen selbst mit einzubeziehen und das partizipativ zu gestalten. Genau, arbeiten da sehr viel mit der türkischsprachigen Community, aber genau, das ist einfach so aus der Geschichte unseres Vereins gewachsen und machen das auch mittlerweile auf anderen. Genau. Und genau, kommt gerne. Ich muss leider bald los, aber deswegen kommt gerne bald vorbei und ich gebe weiter.
Hi, ich bin Antonia Büchel, das ist Nina Günzel. Wir sind von der Berliner Tafel. Das ist die erste Tafel Deutschlands, wurde 1993 gegründet. Inzwischen gibt es über 900 Tafeln in Deutschland. Konzept ist vermutlich allen klar, wir retten Lebensmittel und verteilen diese an armutsbetroffene Menschen. Darunter hauptsächlich unsere 48 Ausgabestellen, aber auch 400 soziale Einrichtungen von Frauenhaus über Obdachlosenheim, Kinder- und Jugendeinrichtungen, alles Mögliche. Ja.
Genau, dazu haben wir noch die Spendenaktion mit Sinn serviert. Die hieß früher Suppe mit Sinn, kennen vielleicht der ein oder andere. Da können GastronomInnen ein Gericht auf ihrer Karte als mit Sinn deklarieren und von diesem Gericht geht ein Teil als Spende dann an die Berliner Tafel. Das können wir euch auch allen sehr ans Herz legen.
Schön, dass ihr da seid.
Hi, ich bin Alice und das ist
Pauline.
Und wir versuchen gemeinsam unverkaufte Kantinenmahlzeiten umzuverteilen an Personen, die auch armutsbetroffen sind, aber auch gerne an alle, die nachhaltig denken und nicht mehr 2 Millionen Tonnen Kantinenessen im Müll sehen wollen pro Jahr. Wir haben gerade frisch eine App entwickelt, mit der Foodsharing messbar wird und auch legal sicher. Das heißt, wir freuen uns sehr, wenn irgendjemand hier Kontakt zur Kantine hat, rein zufällig, und Lust hat, mit uns Pilotprojekte durchzuführen oder einfach unsere Mission voranzutreiben, sodass die richtigen Leute von uns mitbekommen. Wir haben auch noch zum Glück Fördermittel bekommen, also freuen wir uns sehr, diese zu nutzen, um Pilotprojekte durchzuführen und auch zu finanzieren. Und genau, sprecht uns an. Wir sind den ganzen Abend da, sind auch nicht bald weg. Also genau, ich freue mich schon sehr auf Gespräche.
Hallo zusammen, mein Name ist Ruben González, ich komme aus Peru, so wie diese wunderschöne Kartoffel, ja, die sind Kartoffeln, die ewige Kartoffel, nämlich Chuño. Wir beschäftigen uns genau um diese Vermittlung vom Wissen aus dem Süden, aus südlichen Ländern. Unsere Initiative und hoffentlich bald Verein heißt Intikuren zwischen Tischen und Kulturen und arbeiten wir in dieser Schnittstelle zwischen Kunst, Kultur und Küche. Küche als eine Brücke zwischen Weltanschauungen, Traditionen, Religionen, weil wie wir heute alle mitbekommen haben, ist eine niedrigschwellige Art und Weise, dass die Leute zusammen auf einen Tisch sich treffen, eine Mahlzeit vorbereiten, gemeinsam essen. Wir sind gerade schon in einem schönes Projekt in Pankow mit dem Goethe-Institut unterwegs, die internationale Bibliothek der Dinge. Werden nächste Woche am 29. 4. fangen wir an und über weitere Projekte, Kooperationen und so freuen wir uns, warten auf euch in unserem Tisch.
Danke.
Ja, hallo, ich bin Frieda, ich bin Teil vom Team Die Gemeinschaft. Wir vernetzen alle Menschen, die mit Lebensmitteln arbeiten, mittlerweile deutschlandweit. Höre ich mich doppelt oder ist das?
Nee, alles
okay,
gut.
Nein. Genau, mittlerweile deutschlandweit und machen Bildungsarbeit mit dem Ziel, bessere Produkte, also ökologische, faire Produkte in die Bäckereien, in die Küchen und am Ende eben auf die Teller zu bekommen. Wir arbeiten deshalb auch oft mit der Kartoffel und machen hauptsächlich Events wie zum Beispiel Hofbesuche. Am 4.5. ist der nächste Hofbesuch zum Florahof, also falls jemand da Zeit und Lust hat, kommt gerne mit dazu. Wir haben auch gerade eine Eventreihe, die auch deutschlandweit ist, für Bäckerin, Müllerin, danke, Müllerin, aber auch Landwirtin eben um das ganze Kornuniversum rum, wo wir uns eben auch total für ein besseres Lebensmittelsystem einsetzen. Das war's. Ich freue mich, wenn ich hier mehr erzählen darf.
Hallo, wir sind TDD Bon Appetit. TDD steht für Tischlein deck dich und uns gibt es schon seit 19 Jahren. Genau, soweit von mir.
Ja, wir sind ein nomadischer Dinnerclub, wobei wir gestartet sind ganz klein als Freundeskreis und verschiedene Orte in Berlin für unterschiedlich lange Zeiträume besetzt haben und Gastköche und Gastköchinnen eingeladen haben, zu kochen.
Und ihr habt ganz tollen Merch mitgebracht. Es lohnt sich, da vorbeizugucken.
Genau, es lohnt sich auf jeden Fall, bei uns vorbeizukommen. Was fehlt noch? Was wollte ich noch sagen? Vielleicht das Letzte, was wir gemacht haben, ist wir organisieren seit mehreren Jahren, 4 oder 5, glaube ich jetzt schon, einen Bake Sale einmal im Jahr im Frühjahr, der war vor 2 Wochen, zusammen mit dem Solidarity Gastronomy Network, was Kavita vorhin erwähnt hat. Da sammeln wir Geld, indem wir Kuchenspenden von Bäckereien und Privatpersonen annehmen und wir verkaufen den Kuchen und darüber hinaus generieren wir mehrere tausend Euro jedes Jahr, die wir dann an unterschiedliche Zwecke spenden.
Ja, wir sind Johanna und Anita von Restlos Glücklich, einem Bildungsverein, der ganz viele Projekte in Kitas und Schulen umsetzt. Und unser Hauptthema ist Lebensmittelwertschätzung. Wir zeigen also Kindern, wie man Lebensmittel retten kann, wie man Lebensmittelverschwendung vermeiden kann. Und wir sind aber auch in Kiezen unterwegs, wo wir mit den NachbarInnen und geretteten Lebensmitteln kochen. In dem Projekt die Berliner Ernährungscoaches, in dem wir beide auch noch sind, arbeiten wir dann auch noch mit Institutionen aus 3 Berliner Bezirken zusammen und versuchen, dass diese solche nachhaltigen und gesunden Kochangebote selbstständig umsetzen und ihre Ernährungsumgebung gemeinsam mit den Menschen vor Ort gestalten. Genau, und dabei soll Genuss und Gemeinschaft im Vordergrund stehen.
Hallo, wir sind Anna und Mona von Über den Tellerrand. Seit über 10 Jahren schaffen wir Begegnungen übers gemeinsame Kochen, wie so viele von euch. Wir sind in Berlin gestartet 2013 und sind mittlerweile an über 40 Standorten in ganz Deutschland, Großstädte, aber auch im kleinen ländlichen Raum. Auch wir haben Merch dabei und auch wir haben viel mit Kürzungen und dem Thema Fördermittel zu tun. Deswegen haben wir eine Spendenkampagne gelauncht, damit unsere wichtige Arbeit hoffentlich auch in Zukunft noch existieren kann. Da können wir auch gerne im Gespräch nochmal zusammenkommen. Genau, also uns ist es einfach ganz wichtig, dass bei uns Menschen, egal wo sie herkommen, an einem Tisch zusammenkommen, nicht nur zusammen kochen, auch andere gemeinsame Aktivitäten nachgehen, darüber im Idealfall Vorurteile abgebaut werden, Menschen zusammenkommen, Menschen sich kennenlernen, Gemeinschaft und ja auch langfristige Netzwerke und Freundschaften entstehen.
Sehr schön, dann vielen Dank für eure Kurzvorstellungen und dafür, dass ihr euch auch wirklich kurz gehalten habt. Und jetzt eröffnen wir hiermit den Minimarkt der Möglichkeiten. Also kommt gerne miteinander ins Gespräch und genau, mindestens 2 Initiativen, denkt dran.